ain't about fame, it ain't about fake friends. And screw your ex, is such a flake. Forget your grades, you need a break. It's all about you, no matter what the others say. But now I'm done talking, the lights on me. I tell you, I guarantee this night's about to take a turn for the better. Now the rain is pouring and all I see is lightning around my feet. Now nothing can bring me down. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. It ain't about money, it ain't about the coolest job. It's about having fun and love the ones that makes you shine. It's all about you, no matter what the others say. But now I'm done talking, the lights on me. I tell you, I guarantee this night's about to take a turn for the better. Now the rain is pouring and all I see is lightning around my feet. Now nothing can bring me down. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. I'm done talking, the lights on me. I tell you, I guarantee this night's about to take a turn for the better. Now the rain is pouring and all I see is lightning around my feet. Now nothing can bring me down. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. I just wanna dance till my heart goes la la la. I just wanna dance. Hold on, baby, I don't dance, but how I love to be around you. I'm not scared to take a chance. Yeah, I'm so happy that I found you. And you know that I'm yours, alright. You can tell by the look in my eyes. Don't wanna play it cool, I give it straight from the heart. Oh, how I love to be around you. We got something better than the others. We can fly higher than an eagle. Take me somewhere we can be together. Oh, how I love to be around you. Oh, how I love to be around you. You can show me how to move, 'cause I don't wanna be sitting alone. I don't care what road you choose. Don't wanna go back to who I was before. And I know that you might know right. I can tell by the look in your eyes. Don't wanna play it cool, I give it straight from the heart. Oh, how I love to be around you. We got something better than the others. We can fly higher than an eagle. Take me somewhere we can be together. Oh, how I love to be around you.
Welcome in, Smite fans, to the Albion Giants Smite League. We've got the Sharixx Division quarterfinals, and you've got Frog, you've got Kaizo bringing to the action. I'm super excited to be back at home. Albion Giants, my original home, of course. Love the league. Love to be back. Love to be back here with you, Kaizo. How you feeling, man?
I am doing lovely, buddy, and it is good to have you back here, even if I have to drag you kicking and screaming back to the amateur scene. You guys should see the glow up this guy has had and how jaded he's become now that he's a big shot SPL caster. He ghosts all of my DMs, can never get a hold of this guy. It is
Jaded.
insane the way that this
Wow.
guy's changed.
That's man, that's some heat coming off the chair too. I'll just ignore, move right on by that. We got Alien Nation going up against NC State Red here in the quarterfinals. This is a number 4 seed versus a number 5 seed matchup.
Yes.
Pretty closely compared between these two teams, and there's a lot to play for here in the quarterfinals, but it's not going to get any easier from this time. They got to go on to face the number 1 seed, whoever wins this matchup. So I mean, yeah, you're focused on taking the win here today, but you're also focused on refining that game plan so you can bring it into the semis and eventually the finals.
Which does kind of make this game a heat check then, Frog, because you not only in this game want to outlast the opponent, want to look better than whoever your opposition is, but you also need to kind of set the standard here because you can't really scrape by an opponent of this level with the knowledge that, assuming you do end up taking the victory here, you're going to be the ones playing against that number 1 seed. If you want to make a good impression, if you want to actually go into the next match feeling confident, this one should not feel as close, despite the fact that, number 4 seed versus number 5 seed, Frog, that is just about as close as it gets.
We're already blazing through picks and bans. You can see 3 bans on either side. Mostly standard stuff thus far. Baba Olaran Thor taken away off the board. Athena, Chernobog, Raijin on the other side. No huge surprises thus far, although I'm a little bit surprised at this first pick. Thought we might see something maybe like
Yeah.
a Yamoja, like a Mage Soul Laner. Those have been pretty popular, but this Freya pick highlighted more than likely for the dual lane.
So specifically for the mage solos, there are a couple of them still open just because you have the Raijin band away. You still have a couple of options, namely the Morgan Le Fay has been very popular, Wash in that category as well. So you don't necessarily have to take one here, but you can actually make that argument about a magical ADC as well, Frog, because Freya and Soul are both available, and they do elect for the Freya, which is totally fine. I have seen a little bit less priority put on the Freya and a little bit more shifted toward the Soul recently, just because while Freya has very good kill pressure, level 8, level 10, somewhere around there, once she has a couple of rings online, it feels like in the very early stages of the game, Soul fights a little bit better around those shield buffs. So neither one is particularly bad, and they don't even have to, assuming they're going for the Soul here for the red squad, grab that here, knowing that it's unlikely that the blue team gets Freya and Soul on the same team. They do still have that option available, and if at all possible, I'd like to see them go for it.
NC State Red with the Geb Pele top two. That's where my eyes go immediately. I mean, we have the top three as well from Alien Nation, Mulan, and Ratatoskr. If this Mulan does end up getting locked in, doesn't looks like it maybe hover. Amaterasu. I love this top three
Oh
actually
yeah,
from Alien Nation. I'm a
definitely.
huge fan. Feels like they pulled a lot off the tier list. The Geb first pick for NC State though, that's a shocker for me.
It is a bit of a shocker, and in particular against something like the Freya, because you typically pick a slower style of support when you know that the game is going to be pacing a little bit slower. If you have something like, I don't know, Artemis Chernobog, you're not expecting a whole bunch of fireworks in that lane. There would obviously be some kind of counterplay that you could put into it, but you don't necessarily anticipate that those characters are going to be brawling to the death. Whereas if you have something like a Freya across the way, you can pretty much anticipate that she's going to be getting mixed up early and often and really forcing you to play around a lot of that neutral farm when you otherwise wouldn't have. Which means that the Geb might be in a bit of an awkward position. It is a character that, especially very, very early on before the Gauntlet of Thebes is stacked up, can be something of a target, particularly for a more aggressive dual lane or something like this Ratatosker that can rotate pretty early and often. Does give you a lot of value in the late game, make no mistake about it. It'll keep the Thoth significantly safer than some of the more meta picks that we've been seeing a little bit more often, but it is definitely a trade-off, so they have to understand that you are sacrificing something to get that late game prowess and that ability to protect your backline more effectively.
Something that we've preached, I think, throughout the community leagues, throughout all of our time casting together, Kaizo, is comfort is king, right?
For sure.
Especially when you're not necessarily playing. I mean, as SPL players, right? You have to play the most optimal god in your position at times. But I mean, down here, this is low diamond, high plat, and they're not necessarily forced into any certain tier list, right? They don't have to
Sure.
play what everybody else is playing. And I personally, I'm a fan, especially if you know this is your style of play where you want to get these rock solid picks first. Notably, I think picking that mid 3v3 off the bat, they have a solid composition they want to base off of. And now they get to hold on for the later half of the draft to maybe wait and pick their solo matchup, wait and pick that ADC matchup after seeing perhaps a little bit more of what Alien Nation pick.
And I am surprised as you bring up the solo lane that no attention given to those mages that I mentioned previously, the Morgan Le Fay and the Opwash. A little bit more challenging to pilot in the solo lane if you don't have quite as much experience on it than something like the Raijin. Typically, characters that have movement abilities are more forgiving if you're less experienced on them than something that is a little bit more immobile and you have to be more careful about your positioning. So it isn't entirely surprising as we talk about comfort and playing things that you enjoy and that you're experienced on as opposed to whatever is on the top of the tier list. But it is something that they are holding to the very last pick here, Frog. They're going for Hu Yi, which does have a very scrappy matchup into the Freya, can fight pretty effectively into her if necessary. But Very, very curious to see what that last slot's going to be for them.
It's actually a Morgan Le Fay hover on the side of Alien Nation. They've already got that Amaterasu. Of course, we have seen that Ama in jungle and in mid and support once upon a time. Although I'm hesitant to say that we're going to get any of that spice in game number one here, the best of
Right.
three. Morgan Le Fay much more likely hovered for the mid lane on this left hand side. That would take it away from the solo matchup. But you got to think if you were looking for a mage solo, you probably would have picked it by this point if you were looking to get one of those high priority picks. Although, probably Pwash still on the board and one of the more annoying matchups to deal with, especially into that Amaterasu.
Yeah, Ama does not enjoy that one. It's you typically want to be able to pressure farm a little bit more with the Amaterasu and clear the wave pretty effectively, and Opwash denies you a lot of that by just having better secure than you do, and also preventing you from using that heal because the stun's coming out, more follow-up damage. But instead of that, they're going for this Hercules last pick here, which is a vastly different matchup. I mean, the landscape of solo lane significantly changes when we're talking warriors versus talking about mages. The Amaterasu Hercules matchup is one where these characters are probably not going to get too aggressive with each other. They both are pretty comfortable scaling into the late game. I think that Amaterasu a little bit more favored if we do go to full build level 20 than something like the Hercules, but both of these guys can be late game tyrants if given license to do so. It's going to be a lot on these junglers to dictate whether playing around this Freya, which probably the Order Squad is going to be looking to do, versus the Chaos team would like to ideally freeze out that lane, keep it just about even. Maybe play around this mid 3v3 that you talked about a little bit earlier on. Something like the Charon can get caught into the Gebolt Final Judgment combo, does have decent mobility, but still prone to potentially getting isolated if he walks too aggressively through the jungle. Couple of different ways this one can pan out, and it's going to be up to the junglers primarily to determine which of those playstyles we're going to be adopting.
Junglers for sure, I think, have a lot of prowess to be deciding where things are going to happen. The semi-global pressure from Ratatosker, something we didn't even get a chance to touch on. And then that pressure, just raw pressure coming out from the Pele pick, something we've seen in mid and ADC before this season, and then almost like just kind of fell off the face of the earth just a little bit. But I mean, I think brings a lot of pressure. Where do you think these junglers, obviously maybe Alienation, looking to put this Freya on notice and make sure that they can get some pressure over there in that dual lane? Where do you want to see Pele in the first 10 minutes of the game?
Pele probably playing around the mid camp control. They do have a lot better range with the Thoth over the Morgan Le Fay and can kind of force her to linger and tower a bit. Morgan Le Fay has very good poke, has decent short range peel, but when it comes to actually securing that farm, particularly around the left mids, right mid, somewhere around there, it is a little bit more of a struggle to contest that as compares to something like the Thoth that can stand halfway across the map, Frog, and then still secure everything just fine as long as something is in that pit. So that could be an option for them. You could also look to pressure out this solo lane a little bit harder because Amaterasu more of a late game character than the Hercules is. Hercules with the passive can hit incredibly hard with the auto attacks, potentially just outright outbox the Amaterasu. So 2v2 probably favors them. I'd like to see NC State Red kind of play over on the right hand side of the map. If you cut the map in half right down the middle, anywhere from the middle to the right, I think is their domain.
With all five gods locked in, we are ready for game number one. Alien Nation on the left side of your screen and NC State Red picking up the red squad on this one. My immediate focus towards the builds, of course. The soul lane matchup was one that we had talked about, and admittedly, I'm a little bit surprised by what we're seeing here picked up by markers specifically. And I'll let you sort of peruse the field, if you will, Kaizo, so you can bring us in a different direction.
Sure.
But my eyes are on this sigil because it is not something I have been seeing recently at all.
Yeah, you're totally right about that, Frog. And I do think if we're taking a look at all the builds, at least so far, that is probably the one thing that sticks out to me the most. Everything else looks fairly run of the mill with that sole exception. And that's because Warding Sigil is incredibly slow for a solo laner. I mean, it gives you excellent defensive tools. It gives you a lot of protections, gives you that mitigation as well. But at least in the early game, you're not clearing any waves anytime soon. You usually want like Death's Toll to give you sustain, Bluestone to help you clear. A lot of people have been going the Vampiric Shroud on the magical characters for much the same. But the Warding Sigil is basically an investment. It is only going to be good in the late game, and up until that point, or pretty much don't notice it. I mean, it's fine base stats. The passive is okay, but when compares to the incredible sustain that Strength of a Dragon has with the Death's Toll, it's just going to fall a little bit shorter when it comes to keeping him topped up in that lane. And again, Hercules does have outright better pressure, at least early on, than the Amaterasu does. So he does have something to help make up for it, but it's just going to make it a little bit more difficult for him to contest the clear once we get a couple of points in these abilities, and Amaterasu can really start to rotate the map a little bit heavier.
See a little bit of pressure on this left-hand side. This is where Alien Nation want to play through for my money. I think good from NC State, making sure that they've got that ward coverage. Want to be careful of that potential early jungle rotation, but I mean, they've picked for pressure. They picked the Freya, and now it feels like they've picked around it just to make sure that they have some of that dash in and stun onto J-Bugger there. I don't think they have the damage to take down the early game Geb, but I mean, you can very much see the hard focus here, the Charon Freya doing a lot to bring pressure to this lane.
And Blink also expended in the mid lane off camera. Trey tried to look for a pick on Stinkmeat. By the way, best name in the lobby, Stinkmeat. Didn't unfortunately grab that, doesn't pull the beads either, but does successfully invade that right-hand side of the map. And remember, if you're NC State Red, if you're the Chaos side, that is where your domain kind of is, around those back camps on the enemy side of the map, playing around these blue buffs, that right mid. If you divide it down the middle again, Frog, you want to make sure you're staying on the right-hand side of the map. And Alien Nation seems to know that as they send the Ratatosker to the dual lane, grabbing that shield buff. NC State Red clearly know that, based on the fact that they have their jungler already over there. I don't think that she's even crossed over the halfway point to the left-hand side of the map, maybe save for the beginning of the game. Both these teams seem to have a pretty clear game plan for what they're going to do, and I do agree, obviously, with all of what's been going on, but there is one thing that I missed, Frog. One thing I didn't point out when we were talking about the builds. And you already know where I'm going with this.
Oh, man.
Recipes, people. Recipes, recipes, recipes. You have to cook. There is objectively no reason not to cook. These things give you pretty decent effects. They give you even a small amount of gold, which not a lot of people know. There is no downside, because they're free. There might be a downside for Alien Nation with Trey on the way over here.
On the double knock-up, finds little bro Face at least a little bit early, but he's hit level 5 first, and he's made the best usage of the rotation that he can. The Mize will get slowed down a little bit, but NC State on the timer of the shield buff right as they hit level 5, and instead of a blue buff invade, it's actually NC State Tori get the purple buff invade, and Fire and Ice on the rotation back wins a 1v2 and takes down Ratatosker as well.
That's insane. I mean, he had to have been low. Either that or Fire and Ice must have hit literally everything without getting hit by a tick of damage, because he's still got half HP to work with. Stinkmeat doesn't even burn the ultimate trying to get the kill onto the Thoth, so maybe a disconnect there between the Alien Nation mid-jungle, but that's already huge, Frog, for NC State Red, because again, dual lane is the part of the map where Alien Nation is supposed to be favored. That Freya should have dominance of pretty much that entire side of the map. So the fact that Trey rotates over, as you mentioned, right on that shield buff timer, already level 5 from getting the invade off on the right-hand side of the map and getting his own farm. Meanwhile, little bro Face just a couple of scrapes away from that level 5 mark of his own. I think that if both dual laners have their ultimates available, probably Alien Nation walks away from that without a death, but just an excellently timed rotation there from Trey. The timing is critical there, Frog. I don't think that you can pull that one off if it's 30 seconds later, definitely not a minute later. So kudos to NC State Red for starting out red hot.
2 kills on the board early, and an early gold lead to boot, about 1,000 in favor of NC State Red. I wonder if they try to continue that pressure over on the left-hand side. For now, though, have to be careful if you're Fire and Ice. because the damage is coming down. They drop everything on the enemy mid laner, but Stinkmeat, he pushed up too far, and the ultimate comes through the wall. A bit of a punish there from NC State, but I got to admit, I'm a little bit confused on that engagement from Alien Nation.
Yeah, Alien Nation were the ones that were calling the shots there. They were forcing that engagement to happen. Maybe doesn't look like any ward coverage to indicate that they knew that. Well, no, I say that there is a ward up here where we're walking right now for both teams. So Alien Nation knew that Trey was there and just apparently not afraid of the Pele. They found out pretty quickly why they should have been afraid of the Pele, though, because even despite the CC immunity that Stinkmeat got from the oh my gosh, what is it? Consuming glyphs, sigils, something like that. What is Stinkmeat's ultimate? Can we hover that one?
You got this.
It's consuming power? Is that it? Consuming power. There you go.
Let's go.
Little brownie point for me. With the consuming power CC immunity, you would think that you're a little bit safer. You even get a small amount of sustain, but with Pele already having the Jotun's Wrath finished off, the damage is just way too high from this god right now to try to face tanker down and actually put out any meaningful damage. Fire and Icy also doesn't panic there, just turns around, returns all of his damage, and knows how much health he has to work with. I mean, NC State Red are playing very clean right now for being behind at least a little bit in the seeding charts. Don't forget, this is number 5 NC State Red versus number 4 Alien Nation, and NC State are off to a great start.
I'm also noticing now that the relics on both of these junglers, you get the standard blink coming through from Tori, but a beads, maybe a little bit lack of pressure on Mongoose Man. I mean, of course, he has that global presence, but I would almost expect him with the more aggressive composition. You're looking into a Geb, you're looking into a Sigil Hercules, right? Like, you could theoretically focus any of these lanes. You've got an Amaterasu to play through, and you go beads, and you're waiting for the scaling.
The beads is probably less about the aggression of the enemy team and more about the counter engage potential, because you have to think, if you're Mongoose Man, what does your fight look like? Well, I'm going on one of these backliners, and then as soon as I engage, there's a Geb shield drop down and then Cataclysm on top of my head as well. Nobody here to help him in left, though.
Yeah, Riot in the air. We'll get the jump off. The re-engage, though. Double knock up and into the ultimate. Everything dropped onto Mongoose Man. And it's a jungle for jungle trade. Arrays has to be careful, though.
Mana.
Demise a little bit around the corner. And a lack of mana forces everybody to back off on that left-hand side. Once again, Tori feels like in the right place at the right time. Good counter engage, 1-for-1 trade.
1-for-1 probably favoring Alien Nation there, though, just because they do shut down Trey, who a little bit farther ahead. And actually, hang on, Arias jumps in there, gets the beads forced out and off of him. I don't necessarily think he was in enough danger, to warrant expending the cooldown, but does at least burn it nonetheless. J-Bugger was on the scenery, probably could have kept him safe, but the fact that Trey is once again over here trying to shut down what Alien Nation is cooking up in the left-hand side of the map dictates to me that they're pretty on top of things, Frog.
Jump in from Arraeus, and he has to try and find his way to safety. He makes it towards the support, and Peel coming through. They've got to kill the jungler, and they will at least get the trade. But he'll find the kill before he drops a 1-for-1 again. And burning beads there, that comes around to punish Arraeus.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I was just talking about, where what does your fight look like if you're Mongoose Man? Well, you're chasing down this 1 HP ADC, Geb shield comes out, Cataclysm comes out as soon as you try to get the kill. And because he has beads, he at least manages to land that kill. Excuse me, if he has a blink or pretty much anything other than beads there, doesn't actually get that, and then it's a 0-for-1 in favor of NC State Red, but the change in the relics, the change in the itemization, if you will, at least allows him to get something there. And Alien Nation are feeling a little bit scrambling here to me, Frog. I mean, it is still only 1,000 gold down, but it feels like the map is in favor of NC State Red just about everywhere. They have all of the pressure in the world, at least in the mid lane. Fire and Icy has been letting them rip on Stinkmeat and just about anybody else. He's already 3-0 on this Thoth, and that can be incredibly difficult to shut down without the assistance of something like a well-timed through the cosmos. I mean, this is a character in Thoth that can play very far away and very safe with a lead if need be.
We're getting around that time though, where neutral objectives start to become the focus. Beacon spawning in just 60 seconds, Gold Fury on the map as well. I think this left side of the map, if it wasn't the focus already, it's definitely what you're thinking about for the next 2 minutes here or so as we start to see those rotations for these objectives. I'd like to point out everybody now has a recipe.
I was looking
So
at that.
we've gotten to the point. I don't know if they got reminded and now they do finally have it around their waist. I think particularly important for Reyes to grab that one. But before we even have this beacon spawn, maybe a little bit of engagement. Both of these supports trying to catch anybody off guard. And I think right around this beacon spawn, you get the rotation over as well. Reyes, he's hanging out in the jungle.
Yeah, he is coming over a little early here, still 30 seconds or so. And in fact, both of these solo laners, if they back now, could be here just about on time for this fight. We are probably brewing toward a head here. Mongoose Man wants to get a gank off before this engagement starts, and he's got the 1v1 in left.
He's coming around the back. This damage coming through from Freya, though. An ultimate gets traded on the mid lane as well, though. Stinkmeat loses his life to the ultimate from Thoth. And they are able to trade 1-for-1 across the map. Looking at the relics, you burn it away, but hold that thought. Mongoose Man in on the ultimate, burns beads off the mid laner. And now a 3-man, make it 4-man grouping for Alien Nation around this beacon. You had some pressure early on for NC State, but the late rotation markers, he's on his way in.
He is coming up behind a big Gebolt there, actually.
Gets 3, but the Strength of Dragon times his ultimate with it. And little Broface, not long for this world, trying to turn it around. And a double kill for the Amaterasu. Markers gets in there and trades one back in full HP onto the beacon. And Reyes, he's rejoined from base just to help make out the pressure. Little Broface still in the grave. And now J-Bugger respawning. Trey in just 10 seconds. NC State, they've stuck around. I think they'll maintain the pressure.
They should be able to grab this one with an excellent re-engage there. Strength of a Dragon was first on the scene. I actually might have to hold that thought as Mongoose Man steps up again and gets bursted down here by the CC. Thotholt is off the mark, but they're jumping in.
Jump in and Fire and Ice grabs the kill onto the Ratatosker. Strength of Dragon forced to back away. And Stinkmeat, he's back from base, but he does not want to get fully involved. I mean, that whole thing starts so scrappy for both squads. You get a pick in left, pick in mid. I didn't think Mongoose Man would make it over there as quickly as he did. I'm holding that thought. I don't think there's going to be any huge follow-up here. Stinkmeat fell a little bit lower than I expected, but I mean, Kaizo, all that was over a beacon.
Yeah, and it really is just something to fight over. And that's why I think the addition of these beacons is so interesting, because up until this point, it's just been the Gold Fury that you've had to contend with. And that's where Alien Nation's focus is right now. It's only J-Bugger to play defense.
He does see it. In the air is Mongoose Man, but he's just doing some zoning. You're going to need a miracle steal here if you're J-Bugger. And Alien Nation, they secure it all the while. They're trying to secure the kill onto the Geb. And little Broface grabs that one, sends him to the gray screen. NC State a little bit slow on the uptake, not there in time, despite the fact that I feel like J-Bugger was there. He knew what was going on the whole time.
Everybody was pretty far away from where J-Bugger was at, though. I mean, they did seem to rotate just about as soon as that information went down, but good on Alien Nation for recognizing a potential opportunity and capitalizing. NC State Red trying to do the same on right. They do get the Pyromancer, so what was a little bit of a hit to their lead is at least shored up slightly by getting the neutral objective on the right-hand side of the map. But now Markers might be in trouble.
Trey in trouble as well on the other side of the fight as he makes his way to safety. Markers in the midst of 3 here, and Fire and Ice peltering through the damage. Have to be careful, the Amaterasu coming through the backside of the fight. Fire and Ice on this, though, has been crazy with these ultimates. Feel like he has been the catalyst with a lot of this damage.
Yeah, he is on the mark on a lot of these shots, and you kind of need him to be when he's got most of your lead here. He is the one that's 5-0-1. He's gotten 5 8s, we'll say. That's what, 75%-ish, give or take, of the NC State Red kills in this game so far, which means that he is kind of the guy to watch for the rest of this game. He's going the pure damage build. We do see a lot of those going for a little bit of hybrid itemization, maybe a breastplate of valor, but looks like no such luck here for Fire and Icy. He wants the big numbers and he wants them as often as possible. So going straight into what appears to be an Ob Shard here. Could also be Spear the Magus, but keep an eye on that. And actually, as we're looking at builds, Frog, I want to take a look at Marker's build again, because like we mentioned previously, he had the Sigil, and then he's just building the tankiest damn Hercules build I've ever seen. He's got the breastplate glyph for some split protections, contagion also for more FISD, and a full magic defense item. I mean, he is leagues far ahead of the Alienation Soul Laner in terms of pure tankiness.
Arias under pressure here on the left-hand side, forced into the air is Mongoose Man, but he does not get there. Little Broface makes his way up, but there will be no follow-up further onto the enemy ADC. Dude, that's a lot of damage, man. That's a lot of damage on Mongoose Man. He tries to get up, and I feel for him. He's trying to find the safety. He's engaging, but once again, it's Fire and Ice coming through on this ultimate.
And actually might be some more action here in the mid lane. J-Bugger rolls in, and a good pluck on Demise will at least be some damage on the Sport. They use the Gebel, too.
Bring him down to half HP. Stink Meat, he's there as well. But I think the rotation you're looking for is Arias. Now back from base, feeling a little bit healthier. With this Pyromancer down, the Gold Fury down, if they wanted to force something, it would have to be this Fire Giant, but still maybe a little bit too early on in the game for that, so all the pressure will dissipate a little bit. Back to, I mean, you were talking about the Markers build. That's got to be uncomfortable, man. He's wearing like 3 breastplates, right?
He is
like
sweltering in all of that armor.
He's walking around and he's in uniform too. Like you're asking a lot from him. I think his ability though to stay up, maybe due to the help of his team over here trying to take out Strength the Dragon, pulled up, pushed back, and taken down by Markers. Now maybe they feel comfortable looking at the Fire Giant.
If they've got the vision for it, they could know that 3 members of Alienation on the left-hand side of the map, they do lack their ADC, which I've heard the metaphor before is your team fight battery and your objective battery in these games, Frog. If your ADC isn't there, if your ADC isn't healthy, then you don't have the opportunity to do some of these bigger objectives, to push for a Phoenix, to go for the Fire Giant. It seems that NC State Red abide by that philosophy, even though they had the 4v1 on the right-hand side of the map. Still want to make sure they don't leave anything up to chance, because don't forget, they've been nursing a fairly small gold lead for the majority of this game. And if they pull the Fire Giant, if that gets stolen away, that's an opportunity for Alienation to get back in here. So too is this Primal Fury.
Picked up, down to about half HP.
Oh, Dragon!
A teleport, though, nobody realizes. And the Amaterasu is in between 4 here. Mongoose Men looking for the dive and is off the mark completely with the stun, with the ultimate as well. The engagement goes awry for Alienation, but at least they force them off the objective.
And they do have a bit of a reset here. Looks like Alienation might be contending with the idea of pulling this for themselves, though. They're lacking 2 ults, but they're going to try for it.
Markers heading back to base. He'll need to teleport if he wants to rejoin the fight. But Trey, he's coming in on his own, and he'll get evaporated. He's got no help in the back line. Little Broface takes him down, but now the teleport has come through from Markers, and he is going to lead the way in stepping up here. Primal Fury down to about half HP. J-Bugger looking to go around the back, but he's got no peel for his teammates now. He has been pushed too far forward. He'll trade his life for 1, but the follow-up is there. Fire and Ice with a triple kill and looking for even more, perhaps on the board with a quadra, but Markers takes the 4th, and it's only Mongoose Man who won't make it up to the sky. A deicide for NC State Red.
And they've got 10 seconds left on any respawn timer, so should be plenty of time to do this Primal Fury. And you know what, Frog? I'm going to call it like I see it. That's a misplay from NC State Red, because you totally could have given that pentakill to Fire and Ice. My man is 9-0. He's playing out of his mind this game. And I feel like there is a universe where you could have allowed him to get both of those last hits and walk out of that with another penta badge from a competitive set. But I mean, regardless of how many kills they get, where it goes to, that was a gigantic fight for them, and that's exactly what they were looking for. Alien Nation, maybe a little overzealous with that fight. I mean, Strength of a Dragon penetrates incredibly deep into the backline of NC State Red with that dazzling offensive, trying to create space, force them back, open up the opportunity for the Gold Fury, but just goes too far deep, gets bursted down, and J-Bugger, you wouldn't know he's playing Geb with the way that he's going for these flanks, but it does work out there due to a 4-man Cataclysm setting the stage for NC State Red, and what was a small gold lead now has the opportunity to turn into a much larger one if they can land this Pyromancer.
Pyromancer being looked at, and NC State secure the objective. They'll take the ultimate away from Strength of Dragon. J-Bugger, he's in. Maybe a big ultimate here, though. Only finds one, and he'll find the gray screen before his team can follow up. Alien Nation in the vicinity, and in fact might look for a bit more of Strength of Dragon. He's caught out. Mongoose Man down low as well, but Markers is up too far, and the ultimate off the mark for Fire and Ice. All of a sudden, Alien Nation finds himself with a 2-man advantage.
And they might be able to go for this middle tower here. They'll knock the Bastions down with Trey and Right. They can go for it. It's only backliners.
Up into the air, Mongoose Man perhaps looking for a risky dive here would be under the tier 2, but they've got minions. They've got 4 or 5 members to push this one down, but look at Trey, the blink in, and the triple engage there, trying to find the follow-up, and makes one send to the gray screen. Mongoose Man falls, and Freya falls as well. Fire and Ice almost accidentally grabs a double kill with the range, and they're looking for even more demise. Gets caught with the ultimate, and a triple for Fire and Ice. A little bit too much bitten off for Alien Nation.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, this Thoth guy, he seems to be playing pretty well for a high diamond division. This is some pretty high level stuff we're seeing this guy doing. But whatever the case may be, I mean, NC State Red are in a fantastic position. And I do want to point out, it's not just Fire and Icy. I mean, he is the top of the player damage charts. He has all the kills, but it has been a joint effort from NC State Red. Every single time, it's Markers creating infinite space. J-Bugger baiting out his life. He has 4 deaths in this one, Frog, but each one is meaningful. Each one opens up an opportunity for his team and gives him a giant Cataclysm, a 4 or 5-man knockup, baits out a bunch of cooldowns so that the backline doesn't have to worry about it. And every single time, it feels like somebody is doing their job exactly right for NC State Red. Whereas across the way, I feel like Alien Nation is kind of missing the mark on some communication, some coordination. I mean, Mongoose Man is very much getting in there. Like, he and J-Bugger could be best friends with the way that they both just relentlessly dive into the enemy team and create an opportunity, whether or not their team is going to follow up with it. Every single fight, he's in very deep, he's surrounded by a bunch of members, he's getting decent damage off onto the backline, but there's no coordination there. Strength of a Dragon isn't alongside him, and that could be one of two things. I mean, that could be Mongoose Man going in too early, or Strength of a Dragon not thinking it's a good opportunity. Whatever the case may be, they need to get some kind of coordination there, because you're not getting to Fire and Icy effectively. He is the guy to beat. He is the king of the hill right now, and you will not win a fight for Alien Nation if you can't somehow bring down this Thoth.
It's siege time for NC State. It's Titan time for both of these teams. They push out of the base. They get both towers in the left side. Tier 2 and Tier 1 fall down. So a little bit of global gold in their pockets and a bit more for them to pick up if they want to. Gold Fury on the map. Pyromancer in just a few seconds. And of course, these Tier 2 towers still up and available in the mid lane and in the right lane. And I'm thinking, I mean, this seems like a Fire Giant. The timing of it wise, at least, seems like where you get a fire giant, you just push down the towers, you're trying to use it to secure the next fire giant. But I mean, with the last couple of fights, with how dominant they've been, I almost feel like they might have been sieging even without the fire giant.
Now, take a look at this, Frog. Here's why you're wrong about this. That big old boy in the left-hand side of the map with the big red health bar, he wants this left Phoenix. And NC State Red, with 5 members with FG, have an excellent opportunity here to break the base of Alien Nation. This could be a left bird, and it could be more if Alien Nation don't play perfectly.
4-1 split here. The tanks are up, but a double cataclysm there. Mongoose Man trying to make his way to the back line, but is completely alone and gets pushed back into 4. J-Bugger grabs the last hit, and the Titan takes the focus for the rest of Alien Nation. The Chaos Titan gets driven back, but so does Stinkmeat into the base. And as the Phoenix falls, the window into the Titan room is there for NC State Red. Perhaps a little bit too much for them to keep it going. Only 26 minutes in to be asking for an end. They play the siege around the Titan perfectly, and they grab the bird.
They break that one open, break it wide open. Wow, what a great silence there. They break it wide open there, and Little Broface might actually have something to say for Markers being this far forward. He will back up and rejoin the rest of his team there. And I feel like I'm a broken record at this point, Frog. I mean, Strength of a Dragon is dashing back toward his own fountain at the same time as Mongoose Man is going in. And I don't know, obviously, what their team communications look like or what their game plan is for how they're approaching these fights, but it seems pretty fundamentally flawed to me that every time one of them is engaging, the other one is nowhere near them. And that's what teams like this need to thrive on. I mean, if you have a global ultimate or a semi-global in this case with the Ratatosker, things like Thanatos, Ratatosker, Thor, all of these characters need somebody else alongside them so that they don't take the brunt of the damage when they engage. They need a solo laner, they need a mid laner that's diving, they need some kind of backline, or excuse me, frontline support, some kind of assistance to make that happen. And I haven't seen that from Alien Nation for what feels like 27 minutes now. I mean, they are still yet to kill Fire and Icy, and I said it before, I'll say it again, I don't think Mongoose Man is capable of doing that by himself. They need to make some kind of large-scale change to the way that they're addressing these fights. Otherwise, I'm not sure what they're anticipating is going to go different.
Fire Giant spawning in just a few seconds. Won't be EFG. Still a couple of minutes for that one, but they didn't need EFG to take down the left bird. I'm not sure they need it to win this fight either. Fireman is pushing in down the left-hand side as well. Something to focus on. You do have the teleport, but the blink in will come even before those fire minions get there. A 3-man knock-up in the backline off the ultimate, and Mongoose Man finally gets it done and takes down Fire and Icy. Stink the Dragon will trade for the mid laner to fall, but the Ratatoskers made it out of there. Mongoose Man has done his job and finds the Thoth, gives him his first death.
And Frog, you are so lucky to have the opportunity to cast with me. I mean, it doesn't get smarter than me for addressing these team fights. What did I say? Mongoose Man and Strength of a Dragon need to combine, otherwise they will never bring down Fire and Icy. And the one time so far this game we've seen them do that, Mongoose Man dunks in at the same time as Strength of a Dragon dashes in and drops the Dazzling Offensive, and for the first time this game, in 29 minutes of play, they successfully bring down the Thoth of NC State Red and prevent them from doing the Fire Giant. I mean, I can't script this any better than this, Frog.
I was concerned for Markers a little bit there. He's got a 4th breastplate online. Might be feeling heat stroke a little bit, but he got the amulet. So now he's got 4 breastplates and 2 amulets, I suppose. Where do you wear a sigil? Is it around your neck as well, along with the amulet?
I think it's like
I don't know. I'm not going to have time because Demise is in the front line trying to make space. All the while, Stinkmeat, he may have to back here. I mean, what? Stinkmeat's down to half HP. Mongoose Man is not here for this fight at all, and Fire and Icy has rejoined the fray.
Markers with a knock-up combo there might have an opportunity. Dashing in is Fire and Icy.
Ultimate down, and Strength the Dragon, now he's on to Fire and Icy, and he's got to be careful or he'll find his second death, but the team is there to help him out, and he will inevitably find it, but not before the trade comes through onto
What a
2,
push.
and they're looking for even more. Arrayus with a double kill, and the mid laner falls. All the while, Mongoose Man on the left side of the map, not able to help out his team. Demise, he's trying to stay alive.
Hang
Will
on.
just be trying to avoid some autos. Will not be successful as a triple kill delayed there for Arrayus. But I mean, that just seems like an easy fight, 5v4.
And it's just a smart fight from NC State too, because they recognize that Mongoose Man is in the left-hand side of the map. You can see those fire waves were pushed up so far on the left-hand side, and that's necessary for Alien Nation, right? Like, if they don't send somebody to grab those fire waves, they do lose their bird. And actually, if they're not careful, they could still lose it anyway if they don't send somebody over there. Looks like Little Broface should spawn in time. That leaves Mongoose Man 1v everybody over here at the Fire Giant because of help coming. But again, a great fight there from NC State Red. They send one person to the left-hand side of the map for Alien Nation, and NC State Red pull the trigger immediately. I mean, it's Fire and Icy dashing in. It's the blink in once more from J-Bugger. It is all of the buttons pushed as soon as they saw him on that wave. And fortunately for Alien Nation, they managed to cling on to enough members to prevent them from actually grabbing the FG, but it was just a great fight for them that opens up yet another opportunity here around the FG pit.
It's like finally a bit of fight back from Alien Nation, at least delays the Fire Giant, but now this is EFG. This is even more dangerous than it was, which means you really kind of have to contest it. It's down low looking for the steal, and NC State secure it. They find Mongoose Man as well, and Strength the Dragon, he's trying to find his way out of the fight, but will not be successful. 2 fall, and the Fire Giant, the enhanced Fire Giant, goes to 5, and make it 3 that fall. NC State on a tear down the mid lane.
Little Broface and Demise, the only 2 members left for Alien Nation to play defense. Ult is up for Little Broface, but no relics. This could be dire.
They're looking for the end. 5 versus 2 here. Would have to be a miracle from the dual lane of Alien Nation if they want to defend. But the target, it's on to the Titan, and it's falling fast. Damage from Little Broface. Demise gets 1, but it's all for naught as NC State Red take game 1.
And do it pretty convincingly, Frog. I mean, the first 10, maybe 15 minutes, but even that feels like stretching it. We're only a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there. But from the word go, it was NC State Red. They get the first blood. They immediately start spreading the map, sharing the wealth to everybody, and prevent the snowball of Little Broface. Don't forget, this was the game plan of Alien Nation. They wanted to play around the dual lane. They #1 overall picked this Freya and decided this is going to be our win condition. And NC State Red just do an excellent job of shutting that down and playing to their own strengths. I mean, they got Arrayus to the point that he could at least rotate out, start impacting these fights. Trey put markers decently far ahead and combines with Fire and Icy and J-Bugger to have a lockdown of the middle of the map. They played every single facet of this game pretty much perfectly from 10-15 minutes onward. A couple of slips here and there, yes, but they absolutely earned the victory in this one and did so in a manner so compelling that you have to wonder, what do you even change if you're Alien Nation going into game number 2?
I do want to point out, for all the hype that we gave Fire and Icy, and certainly deserve 13-2, he's not even top damage on his own team. Markers was just absorbing all the focus. He was just running them down the entirety of the game, able to take that top damage number. But that was certainly a little bit of a burn, a lot of action bringing from the NC State. I think if you're Alien Nation, got to go back to the drawing board, got to start thinking about how you want to play this game number 2 differently. For now, though, we'll throw it to a quick break and see you on the other side.
just like gadgets. You tell me with the two hands, I'm too bad. Wonder what your things are like. Need me to get your bills paid. That's what you said. Well, guess I'm just too fake for that. So sit down, listen, think for a minute. Know it might be hard, cause you're uneducated. Break down, face it, breathe for a minute. I'm about to help you with your manners and respect. You get it? Just uneducated. But this so but you make it. One day, manners and respect. I'm a realist. I see your actions like an itchy clitoris. I never listen to the critics. They try to steal you from your feelings for cash. You tell me with the two hands, I'm too bad. Wonder what your things are like. Need me to get your bills paid. That's what you said. Well, guess I'm just too fake for that. So sit down, listen, think for a minute. Know it might be hard, cause you're uneducated. Break down, face it, breathe for a minute. I'm about to help you with your manners and respect. Second chance, so take it chill with your demand. You never listen, think too fast. But one day you'll understand. So sit down, listen, think for a minute. Know it might be hard, cause you're uneducated. Break down, face it, breathe for a minute. I'm about to help you with your manners and respect. You get it? Just uneducated. Just a little bit. But this so but you make it. One day, manners and respect. Respect.
Work it, cannot hold, overflows, become one. Now work it, don't just stop. Let me see you pop at the barbershop. Work it, cannot hold, overflows, become one. Now work it, don't just stop. Let me see you pop at the barbershop. Getting ready for the show. Little soldiers in a row. Watch them closely when they go, go, go. Falling in and out of low. Little soldiers in a row. You can't hate them anymore. Now strap your boots and move your body close to me. Now feel the rhythm, no surrender to the beat. Now strap your boots and move your body close to me. Now feel the rhythm, no surrender to the beat. Work it. Barbershop. Barbershop. Better call the cops. Barbershop. Now work it. Don't you stop at the barbershop. Getting ready for the show. Little soldiers in a row. Watch them closely when they go, go, go. Falling in and out of
Welcome back, Smite fans, to the Albion Giants Smite League. You still got Frog, still got Kaizo. Guys, did you enjoy your Halloween on Tuesday?
I did actually. I had a very unusual Halloween where I gave a 2 hour long presentation on the meaning of life for one of my philosophy classes, and then
Wow.
I went to a party dressed in the same costume I wore for the Sunday SCC broadcast. Frog. I don't know if you watched that, but I got to dress up as age appropriate beverage man.
Age appropriate, but what does that look like?
Oh, it's me wearing footy pajamas that have beer mugs all over them, and I'm a superhero. I'm age appropriate beverage man. My superpowers are I can snap my fingers and instantly teleport to any legal social gathering where people are responsibly enjoying themselves in moderation.
Wow, that's pretty unique ability to wow, pretty unique ability, yeah.
What about you? Have you gone to like Spirit Halloween or something now that the holiday is over to like they discount costumes so you could go get something for next year. Like for example, I was in there, Frog, and I found this clown costume that I think would be absolutely perfect for you.
You know, Kaizo, that's pretty funny. But what would even be more scary is if you dressed up as our Class Act Duel tournament this coming Saturday, November 4th, or the 5v5 Draft Conquest tournament this coming Sunday, November 5th. Real spooky stuff. I mean, Kaizo, if you did have to dress up as a class for the Class Act Duel tournament, what class would you dress up as?
Ooh, that's tough because so as a support main, the reflex in me is to say guardians, but I just feel like I embody the spirit of a warrior so much more. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm just a big old dude with a whole bunch of energy that wants to just punch you in the face a whole bunch of times.
Well, you're wrong on both fronts because right now on the desk, you are very clearly Ra. So I think you're already dressed as a mage.
Oh, well, that's tough, but I was thinking, Frog, if we were to do something like the class act duel thing, it'd be nice if we you know, held hands or something, right?
Absolutely not. Let's get into game number 2 for the Sharixx matchup. Remember, folks, we're in quarterfinals here, and Picks and Man's right around the corner. NC State Red, Alien Nation. And after game number 1, I think you'd be hard pressed to try and ban away, try and focus out what NC State Red want to play because I'm not sure it was a god diff. It felt very much like a pressure diff. Like they knew what they wanted to do. They came in with a game plan. So if you're Alien Nation, you really got to head to the drawing board.
I feel like you kind of rejected me pretty swiftly there without giving a lot of thought. But whatever, we can go back into the game because I do think that you're right. There's not a whole lot specifically for NC State Red that you would want to ban away, right? Like it didn't feel like, oh, they got this one character and that's why they won. I do think there are some exceptions you could possibly point to. I think Fire and Icy very clearly looked very comfortable on the Thoth. And I don't know if chat, you guys got to see the loading in screen, but my boy J Bugger plays a lot of Geb. Like I'm talking a lot of Geb. So maybe put him on something a little bit less comfortable, ban that one away, force him onto, I don't know, maybe a more aggressive support. But honestly, Frog, Athena is not something I want to force any support onto.
Yeah, I'm. Oh darn! My support got oh man!
Shucks,
Oh
grr,
shucks! Rats! There's an Athena instead of a Geb. That,
drat.
yeah, no, that feels pretty good for NC State Red. They target out a little bit different bands. On the other side, the Alienation squad, they were looking to take away some of those target bands. Pele from Trey taken away, and then Markers that top damage Hercules. I think smart to take it away, especially if you're struggling
Sure.
on to dealing with that pick. But man, this Athena, that's a dangerous one to give away. You get the response though pretty immediately. Alien Nation picks up their dual lane. This Honor been one we've seen a little bit more of, a lot of pressure in lane, and then the Fafnir pick up here top 2.
And I do want to point out a couple of things about the way this draft is going, Frog. Number one is that Alien Nation, as the team that lost the previous game, get their option of whether they want to be first or second pick. And they obviously did here elect to go for the second pick slot, which I don't know if that means they understood they would be leaving up Athena and they just already had the game plan of going on her Fafnir in response, or maybe there was some kind of adaptation that was made during the picks and bans that they didn't account for. And it also leaves open all of these magical ADCs. We saw Olorun was banned out very early on. Excuse me, obviously the Freya got picked in game number 1, and Soul uncontested in both games so far, as it looks like NC State Red go back to what was working for Fire and Icy. I don't know, man. It's hard for me to point anything on the NC State Red draft and say, I don't think this pick looks good here, because looks pretty darn good to me, Frog.
Yeah, I'm not too hard pressed when I get my Thoth or my Fire and Icy back on my 12-3 Thoth. I'm not too upset about that. Trey, of course, we haven't seen him on the Thor, but man, I don't think Thor is that bad of a pick either. I feel pretty good about that top 3 for NC State Red. That being said, Alien Nation were in this first pick slot last time around, and we were feeling pretty good about their top 3.
That is true.
And we saw how that went for them. So either way, NC State Red, they get back to some comfort, and once again prioritize out their mid 3v3 up top here. On the other side, it's a question of where you want to go in that third slot. If your Alien Nation, looks like it will be towards the jungle. They lock in the Susano.
Okay. I don't dislike that at all. I think Susano is a great matchup into Thoth, and so between games, Frog, as I was telling you, I was doing some research because uh Mongoose Man reminded me of somebody that I've been watching play in the SEC when I've been casting that. It's actually Pico Ways that I think this guy reminds me a lot of, in the way that they both just unabashedly go in, drop all their damage, and hope that it works out and that they end up winning the team fight off of it. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, you can play jungle so many different ways. You can play a facilitator, you can play the hard carry, or you can play this play style of I'm going in, getting off my damage, good luck. And I certainly think that based on what we saw Mongoose Man doing, that's kind of what the playstyle looks like to me. And Susano is an excellent character to do that, because you have guaranteed crowd control when you go in and push all your buttons. You have giant AoEs to work with that will hit more than one target almost every single time. So even in the event that Mongoose Man plays another game like last game, where he has low kills, high deaths, and high damage, I think Susano is an even better pick for doing that, just because it is so much easier to spread that damage to different people in a team fight and potentially modify the landscape of that fight in a fundamental way that Ratatosker just was not capable of doing.
Well, top 3s locked in for both these squads. The bans come out. Some mid laners taken away from NC State Red. Agni and Scylla off the board. Rama and a Wheelish away for Alien Nation. That Wheelish pick, admittedly, is a bit interesting to me, considering the Thor's locked in. But perhaps they think it has a chance to go solo here. Certainly not an option that we've seen too often, but something that is perfectly viable to cover. Strength of Dragon now on the pick here for Alien Nation. And Amaterasu still available if they want to go back towards that for the solo lane, or these mage solos if they want to try and focus out something like that. The Apwash, the Morgan Le Fay, all available. That one is not one that I ever would have predicted. Granted, I think it's for mid and not for solo. I still wouldn't have predicted it in mid, though.
We have seen at least a little bit of this character recently. I think it was Dardes, if I'm not mistaken, that's been playing this at the highest level, and it still does all the things that Hera has always done. Hera's a character that doesn't mind building a breastplate in the build as well, which obviously, as we've talked about for a couple of weeks now, breastplate glyph, very, very good on pretty much any character that wants to build it. It's a very high utility pick, very high team fight impact as well. Something like, I don't know, drop a giant typhoon and then drop a robot on top of that typhoon is pretty hard to mess up and pretty darn impactful. So I think that if you're looking at game 1 and saying, well, maybe our execution was the problem, I called out the collaboration specifically between the jungle and the solo laner in the previous game. I think that you can shore up a lot of that by picking really big circles, and they've certainly done that at least so far.
Yeah, my only concern is that it doesn't. I'm not sure it really facilitates well with the Fafnir. You almost pick this. The only times we've really seen this god have success is in those objective shred style of compositions. This would be an interesting lock in, though. The other side, you get Huyi Kamazot's locked in to round out the NC State draft. And now, considering an Odin lock in is Alien Nation. You would catch a couple of these characters, but I mean, 3 out of the 5 of them have leaps or teleports on the other side for NC State Red. Home, it does get locked in.
Interesting.
Almost certainly a little bit of comfort there for the Alien Nation soul laner, but if you can make it work, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
It is an incredibly slippery pick, almost in the same vein as the Amaterasu that he played in game number 1. It has a very good team fight ultimate, so too does the Amaterasu. And then while Amaterasu has very unpredictable movement and a little bit of healing, some additional movement speed, Odin has infinite shielding and the ability to jump over walls. I mean, locking this character down, if you're not specifically getting an Athena taunt or a Thor wall or an Anvil of Dawn to lock him down, it's almost impossible to really nail this guy to a wall and bring him from 100 to 0 in a reasonable amount of time. That's part of the reason that we've been seeing a little bit more of this character, at least at the amateur level. I've been seeing a little bit more Odin. It is just so difficult to deal with when it comes to some of these lower CC team compositions, just running around, dropping the cage every so often, even as a deterrent, even to force out the movement abilities and then let your jungler clean up. It does give you a much more specific team fight flow. I mean, you have very big team fight buttons of the Susanoo Typhoon, the Cage, the Hera ult, and the Fafnir transformation. You know when a team fight is happening if you're watching Alien Nation. So that does give them that additional coordination that I thought they lacked in game number 1. So you're totally right, Frog. I mean, this is probably a comfort pick. This is obviously not something that is a rising force in the meta by any stretch of the imagination. But specifically for what Alien Nation need to be doing, I think that it might actually fit pretty well into their composition.
We see the drafts round out for both squads. Interesting point back towards this Thor lock in. It will look like it's going to go towards solo there as Trey may pilot the Camazots. But when you see all 5 gods locked in, Kaizo, for this game too, who your favorite in team fight wise?
Team fight wise, Alien Nation. I mean, they have the bigger team fight buttons that will just outright do more in a team fight. NC State Red have a very pick oriented composition. We're looking at things like the early Thor rotations with the Anvil of Dawn, Athena walking around a corner and taunting into a final judgment. They don't team fight quite as well as Alien Nation, but it's the little bits in between, the small skirmishes, that are likely to favor NC State Red. As far as which team wins this game, just looking at compositions, I'd like to say NC State Red, but if Alien Nation can funnel NC State into a corridor, force them to take a full-on team fight and not those scrappy little pick style engagements, I think Alien Nation have a very good shot here of using these team fight tools and bringing us to a game number 3.
Well, game number 2 on the horizon here. NC State Red, they're now on the blue side. Alien Nation, they've taken over the red side for this matchup. And I think you make a valuable point there about the first 15 minutes of this one. And once again, my eyes are on the junglers as to where this pressure is going to be. Maybe a little bit more towards the soul lane this time around. You don't necessarily, I mean, we've seen Amaterasu Hercules 1,000 times at this point, and there's very rarely any real action other than slap boxing. The Thor Odin matchup is not one that I am as familiar with.
Yeah, Thor matchups in general are a little unusual because you do have very good base damage from all of the buttons, but your ability to actually box in the wave is generally lower than another warrior that will be taking up the position opposite you. I mean, Odin should, in theory, be able to poke out a Thor very early on, be able to clear the wave better than him, and get a pretty comfortable position in that lane. whereas the Thor is more likely to end up sitting in tower for a while, likely to have the lower health bar, and play the poke game from a distance, because just based on the base stats, warriors will just hit harder than you, tank a little bit more damage. But looks like, at least so far, I guess they're going pretty darn even over there.
Yeah, and they are certainly not backing down from the fight. This first totem, I think, does go the way of Strength of Dragon, but this rotation, that could spell doom. You've got a jungler on the left side, a jungler on the right side of the map. Who's going to grab first blood? Jay Booger with the shell! He somehow survives! And on the right side of the map, Trey, he's looking for the kill onto Strength of Dragon, but he won't have a successful gank either. I thought for sure we had first blood, but both junglers unsuccessful.
And by the skin of his teeth, Jay Bugger walks on out of there. The shell absolutely mandatory in ensuring that he survives. And a bit of an unfortunate circumstance there for Alienation. I think that with optimal execution, Frog, that kill probably lands, but Little Broface jumps forward trying to cut off the option as opposed to just jumping for the crowd control chain onto Jay Bugger, which means that he does manage to slip his way out of there and at least hide behind the Bastion for an auto attack or two that probably would have spelled his doom. So maybe some things could have gone differently and we could be looking at an Alien Nation first blood, but credit where it's due to NC State Red for somehow making their way out of there, even when it looked like it probably should have gone the way of Alien Nation.
Mongoose Man, though, early on the left-hand side of the map, at least attempting these ganks. And Trey, he's attempting it on the right-hand side again. And the focus is clear. NC State Red, they were maybe a little bit focused on this left-hand side to start game number one. Well, game number two, they've got their sights on the solo lane. They grab first blood. They'll grab the blue buff invade as well.
And that is something that makes Odin pretty vulnerable in the early game. I mean, you just don't have the damage with the shield and the Gungnir's Might to clear those waves without the help of the jump. And every time you jump, you become a liability. You instantly remove your own escape tool. You know that you're not going anywhere anytime soon. So Trey hangs out in the jungle, waits for Strength of a Dragon to jump on top of that wave, and then jumps on top of the enemy solo laner. And credit where it's due again to NC State Red for once again capitalizing on an opportunity that I didn't really think would be there. I mean, Strength of a Dragon with the early breastplate rush should be pretty tanky over there, provided he's close enough to his tower. He should be able to walk away from a pretty CC light combination of Trey and markers. It's only the wall between the two of them for a hard crowd control to lock down the Odin. They still managed to land that kill and put themselves in a pretty comfortable position, at least on the right-hand side of the map.
We'll have to see if the pressure continues on that right-hand side of the map, as the blue buff will respawn and they'll grab these first items as well. Teleport down had to be used there. Demise, though, looking for some pressure, trying to steal away this shield buff, and the jump in. DC is there onto Jay Bugger, but a little bit late to the party is Little Broface. And for all this pressure that Alien Nation have on the left-hand side of the map in this dual lane, all they can really write home about is a failed gank. They maybe invade that purple, the very first spawn of it, and they've got Mongoose Man over here as well for perhaps another attempt, but I would be surprised if NC State step up at all in this one, unless, I mean, just late.
Okay.
What in the world?
Yeah.
The damage is crazy coming through, and Little Broface with the ultimate, they grab both.
All right, man. I mean, I'm sorry. And if you're NC State Red, you're probably apologizing too for the way that one went, because they got slaughtered by that engagement. It is worth pointing out, Arias, I'm pretty sure, had the jump and didn't use it there. I don't know if he didn't think he was in danger, like Trey is right now.
Oh my goodness, it's just all sorts of burst coming through from Alien Nation, and in the blink of an eye, in the last 30 seconds, Kaizo, they swing from 1-0 down to 4-1 up in kills.
And I don't know what NC State was doing that far up in the jungle. I mean, green buff is available for Alien Nation, so a potential invade there. And Mongoose Man, somebody needs to tell this guy to turn his mana bar on, because he doesn't have any to work with, and he's still going for this purple buff invade. Little Broface wants more.
He's jumping in. Beads get forced from Reyes, and the peel is there from the support. They might turn it around as Trey joins the fight as well. Mongoose Man will fall, and Little Broface, he's got to find the jump if he wants to stay alive.
Oh, what a
pillar delays things long enough to see him a couple more seconds, but a double kill for Trey. Another great jungle rotation.
There needs to be some kind of like unspoken or honestly written agreement for Smite competitive where if you get a sick outplay like that, even if you can still land the kill, you just let him walk away, because that was a phenomenal pillar from Little Broface there. Still ends up dying after the fact, but Mongoose Man, I don't know. I don't know what he's anticipating is going to happen there. I mean, you're playing against an Athena notorious for those re-engages, for the secondary engage coming when you least expect it, and he stays so long with no mana, Frog. If he has full mana bar there, full disclosure, Arias is 100% dead. We don't see that turnaround happen. Even if J-Bugger shows up, they probably still land that kill pretty cleanly. But the fact that he sticks around with quite literally no mana to cast abilities is just shocking to me.
Well, he's here again. This time he's got some mana, but they don't. What? Oh, okay. The Gold Fury pickup. That dude, that threw me
You
for a
thought the
loop
same thing,
right there. I was like, why are they not ganking? But it's because they grabbed the neutral objective. And look, they're right back to it. Watch the left side of the map as now Arrayus has to try and escape. Wow, he will get the jump off and will find the safety, but I'm thinking the Gold Fairy is a little bit more valuable.
Yeah, it definitely did look... Hang on a second. Markers might be in danger here if Strength of a Dragon can find the stun. Should be a kill onto the Thor. Jump will do it, but Cage is a little bit too late to get the slow after the fact. I thought for sure that they just forgot that Arias existed in left lane and just walked away, but they do have object permanence, Frog, and do walk back over as soon as the Gold Fury is done, which gives them a pretty decent spot in this game. I mean, it's been very up and down in the early game compared to the previous, which was just NC State cultivating a very small lead for most of the early game. We got a lot of back and forth in this one, and Alien Nation are looking much better for it already.
Dash in, forces the beats from Stink Meat. And I thought we might continue to see the damage come through, but a great polymorph shuts down the ultimate there from Fire and Icy. Still looking solid on this pressure from the Thoth. I think right around this 9-minute, 10-minute mark. I mean, talk to me about these mid matchups. You talked a little bit about Hera on the desk, right? Just that we've seen her before at the highest level of play. A lot of big circles there, but and specifically into the Thoth, do you think you get a little bit more safety there?
It's a uncomfortable matchup for Hera for sure, because she just doesn't have the range that Thoth does. You don't typically get to interact with Thoth a whole lot unless you can in some way close the gap very quickly and unexpectedly, or somehow manage to match his range, though good luck doing that because it's incredibly far. Stinkmeat does, however, have the all-in potential. If Fire and Icy dashes at some point and Stinkmeat is on the scenery and sees it happen, that is just outright a kill. If you can drop Argus on top of him, the damage is going to be more than enough, even with this breastplate build that I alluded to previously on the desk. It's got more than enough damage required to kill a mid laner with no escape. And speaking of, Stinkmeat's got none for himself.
They're all on the dive, and Trey looking to find the escape. A huge ultimate through the wall, and Fire and Icy finds the kill onto the enemy mid laner. They'll grab another one for NC State Red, but no objectives to speak of to take advantage of that man advantage. Will just be the one pick onto the Fire and Icy.
Frog, I'm going to tell you a secret about Smite, and in particular about playing support.
Okay.
If you want to pick up support, if you've never played support before, the best character you can lock in this game is Athena. And there's a very specific reason for that. And the reason that Athena is my most played support by a wide margin.
Sounds pretty biased.
It is for sure biased, but hear me out on this.
Okay.
Athena is unmess-upable as a support character. If you're missing taunts, you shouldn't be playing Smite.
Dash in here, trying to find J-Bugger, and he doesn't need to hit the taunts right now. He needs to get away, and he won't be able to do so. Mongoose Man finds the last hit onto the Athena. And sorry, I'll let you continue your point now that Athena's in the gray screen.
Sure, I mean, it doesn't hit home as hard now that she dies and then her mid laner also almost dies and they lose the middle tower. Demise is ulting though and could look to turn this.
Mongoose Man has to find his way out. Trey on the chase down, has to hit
What a
the
stun.
abilities, but the peel is beautiful from Demise and a blink out from Mongoose Man. How is he still alive? Trey gets shut down by the rotation, and Demise grabs Arrayus all the while on the mark with the ultimate, but not enough damage there unless the Thor ult is enough. Comes through, hits 3, but the turnaround is too much for Markers to continue. And the ADC wants a little bit more. I'm still hung up, man, though. That's great peel for Mongoose Man.
Mongoose Man looks like a different player game 1 to game 2, and he's going to be here on this Gold Fury pit. Oni Fury, half HP, 2 members to play defense.
Gotta be careful here. Low health bars for NC State Red. The ultimate there onto Markers.
What a
but a great taunt back for the peel, and Mongoose Man falls even lower than he already was. There's nobody here for Alienation to tank up this Oni Fury, and all 5 members here for NC State, but they can't pick it up either. It'll only be the beacon, a little bit of focus out there, and Alienation should grab that one.
They're looking so hot in this game, Frog, and I don't mean just tempo. I mean like arousing to watch this game happen. Alien Nation are getting away with murder in some of these engagements. In particular, Mongoose Man, who, don't forget, this guy was something like 1-9 on Ratatoskr last game. A transformative experience from game 1 to game 2 here for him on the Susano. And it's exactly what I was talking about on the desk. It is just outright easier to apply, more reliable crowd control and damage, that even in the event he were to die in some of these engagements, the Typhoon still hits everybody, you still get knocked up by it, the damage is still there, and now they're going for another Oni Fury here.
Pull here potentially from Demise as he's into the dragon, and a great pillar. J-Bugger gets slowed down, knocked down to about 60% there before he's forced to pull back the Oni Fury. But once again, this grouping continues to be on the left-hand side. I don't think anybody is mystified as to where this next fight's going to happen, except maybe Strength of Dragon. He's not here. He's not rotating for this fight now. The Oni Fury's been picked up. Trey's on it. J-Bugger's been poked down, but Markers, he's into the back alone and will get picked to start the fight. Alienation now a 4v4 on the left side.
And they're marching forward, and they're actually going to frenzy this Gold Fury, Frog. They want it bad.
Picked up down to half HP. Blink in, though, with the Athena ult, and the damage is there. Alienation, they secure the Oni Fury, but they lose their jungler in the process. Demise trying to make his way out. Little Broface joining him in the process as Stinkmeat trying to find the escape as well. But the peel continues to be great. And a double polymorph makes sure everybody else on Alienation stays alive.
And no Strength of a Dragon even needed for that engagement. So despite the fact that they do lose Mongoose Man, who has no beads for another 25 seconds, unfortunately got Athena taunted, they still get the Oni Fury, they still manage to get out cleanly enough and get some much needed farm on a Strength of Dragon, and might contest this Pyro.
In on the cage, traps a couple, but Fire and Icy's doing the damage. NC State secure it though, and looking for more is Alienation now here on the counter. Into the air though, gets the Soul Laner and Markers. He makes his way out alive. So at least trade objectives, NC State doing so, but Alienation now find themselves with a comfortable 4,000 gold lead.
And with a pre-transformed Fafnir here, they're going to try to grab this T2, but the teleport's in!
Double taunt there, and they've got a minion wave. It's 3 there in the fight, but they don't even get the tower down to half HP before they have to back up. J-Bugger in the front looking for a taunt potentially. You can see Fire and Icy planning with the damage to back it up, but the blink back in, and Mongoose Man might want a little bit more to do. Now Trey back from base though, and nobody. We just get constant fighting for the last like 4 minutes.
And Alien Nation are doing that for a very specific reason, Frog. Don't forget, if we have these scrappy engagements, the pick-centered composition that NC State Red is just going to be favored. Taunt into follow-up damage is too reliable to take those scrappy kinds of fights. So Alien Nation are just grouping literally everywhere, enforcing every engagement to be a full 5-on-5 fight. They say, you want to stand in front of us? You better be damn ready to fight to the death for it. All members on the team engaged in every single one of these fights. And the composition speaks for itself. I mean, Demise has gotten incredible value out of this Fafnir so far, and that was the one that you were shaking your head at a little bit on the desk. I wasn't so sure about myself. Usually, if you go with Fafnir, it's for some kind of auto attack composition. You have like a Mercury in the jungle, or double ADCs, or a Soul or something in the mid lane. They don't have any of that. They just have incredible team fight control and additional damage coming from this Fafnir. The jumps have been on point. The hammer stuns on every follow-up of a Susano pluck or a Hera polymorph have been on point from Demise. And Alien Nation are looking like a team that didn't just get blown out in game number 1. I mean, they did not make that game particularly close, basically from this point in the game in game number 1 onward. But here in game 2, things are so much different. And I think part of that might be the fact that Markers is on a much squishier pick here in game number 2. He's still playing like he could walk up 1v5 and just stand in front of everybody. But on the Thor, a character with lower base protections, a little bit more aggressive in the itemization, he's getting punished a lot more heavily than he did previously. Only the one death, but we've seen him poked out a number of times from playing essentially the exact same way he did in game number 1. And I think that's just a large-scale adaptation from Alienware and understanding of how they need to play their game.
J-Bugger pulled back in and eliminated to start the fight. They might want even more than that. The Gold Fury not quite up yet, but the blink in traps 3 in the cage, and the follow-up is immediate. Ultimates come through, and Fire and Icy falls. The dash in, the chase out for the enemy mid laner. And they might try to find even more as Trey and Markers both back to base 25% HP, and you see the focus has shifted with that one pick. They burn a couple of relics as well. They're onto the Fire Giant.
And here's that Fafnir transformation. Frenzy also available. This is not long for this world, Frog.
Looking for the steal potentially will be NC State, but and they've got to step up quickly. This zoning could come through down to about 25% HP. Into the air looking for the steal, down low, and NC State take it away and looking to fight afterwards. Trey finds stink meat. Markers chasing down the enemy jungler. He'll find his way out of there. But now 4 versus 3 members here of Alien Nation. The triple taunt, and the damage is there as Markers gets one more. Mongoose Man trades out for his life. They'll find the support as well. It's only Strength of Dragon, and with the only remaining member standing, NC State flip the stakes on their head.
1K down, and that's not gonna last long as NC State Red, with 4 members and the Fire Giant, start sieging down this right-hand lane. Probably not gonna have time to grab a Phoenix, but could have the opportunity to sweep all of these towers. And Frog, it's one mistake from Alien Nation. This entire game, I mean, up until that point, the score was 5-11. It was a 6,000 gold lead for Alien Nation. And they did everything right. They got a pick very cleanly. They back up. Excuse me. They used the Fafnir ult. They used the Frenzy on the Fire Giant. And it should have gone down so much faster. But Strength of a Dragon wants to play zone duty instead of being in the pit to help out his team with a little bit of attack speed, a little bit of damage of his own. Mongoose Man was a little bit low, didn't also want to be taking the Fire Giant damage. And because of that, they missed the damage check. They just did not kill the objective fast enough to prevent NC State Red from showing up. And it was Markers with the hero dunk into everything. The follow-up from the team was perfect. And what was an Alien Nation lead has now shifted very dramatically to being NC State Red in the driver position and positioned very precariously around this Gold Fury.
Less than 1 1,000 gold separate these two teams now. It's really around the waist, this fire giant carrying a ton of weight. The dash in, the double taunt there, and the damage from Fire and Icy. J-Bugger, he gets blown to smithereens. Nobody has enough damage to follow up, though. He'll lose his life just to trade for that 3-man taunt, and Alien Nation pulls the fire giant off of at least one.
Markers is still here. A good wall will put some damage onto Little Bro Face, but Alien Nation not wanting to step too far forward here. They do know that J-Bugger has 10 seconds and can be here at a moment's notice after that fact with that Defender of Olympus. So NC State Red still sticking around. I mean, J-Bugger already didn't have fire on him. Not too bothered by taking a spill there. Looks like he will channel the Defender of Olympus. They're going in.
They've got to dive quick if they want this to come through, and the combo is not there, is not joined by the Athena, but the double taunt, and will look to save Marker's life. Stun comes through, and the damage is just enough. Mongoose Man is so low on the backside of the fight, but Trey can't find the finishing blow, and it looks to get punished for it, but another great taunt there will save the life of the jungler. And it's a forced disengage for both squads there. I liked the idea, but a little bit late on the execution.
Little bit late. I mean, it's not an easy timing window to pull off that play. It would have been sick if Markers manages to dunk the Athena ult directly on top of the enemy team. Unfortunately, don't manage to land the execution there, but they do not want to give up this Gold Fury. And credit to Alien Nation for being willing to stand here and still playing to their strengths. Remember, all of these 5v5 engagements seem to favor Alien Nation on both paper and in practice. So the fact that Alien Nation not too deterred or perturbed by the fact that NC State Red have the Fire Giant speaks to the fact that they're not out of this game just yet. I mean, stealing away a Fire Giant at a critical moment like that can be backbreaking for a lot of inexperienced teams, but don't forget, these teams are at the seeding they're at and playing for a spot in the playoffs for a very specific reason. They do not go down that quickly, and Alien Nation fight their way back into the FG team long enough that it falls off, and now we're back to almost perfect parity, Frog.
Gold Fury, it's picked up for a second. This dash taunt, though, and Little Bro Face, the pressure is on. He used both relics just to stay alive, but he will do so. He does stay alive. It's not for Trey, though. He gets into the back line and look for the follow-up. Markers into the air and find Strength of Dragon trapped with the wall, and the damage is not enough as a taunt comes through with a transformation for Demise into the Draconic Corruption and looking for the dive. Mongoose Man, watch the Susano all the way in the back. So many low health bars, and the bounce, the wall slows it down, but Fire and Icy finds the enemy jungler, and a 2-for-0 thus far. NC State, they have to make their way out of this one.
Arias beads and jumps over the wall. Demise is getting flanked here. Markers on the backside.
The teleport back in from the Thor. The ultimate's not there, but it doesn't need to be if you've got the damage. And Demise, he jumps in and is not long for this world. The de-transformation has got to come through soon, and they just need a little bit more. They'll find the enemy support inside the Odin cage, and they'll get on out of there. Gold Fury still standing strong.
Oh, deep breaths, Frog, because this is, we're getting messy, and I love it when these teams are so willing to fight. And the fact that only one person dies on either team feels like a crime, because we've been fighting around this Gold Fury for, what, 3-4 minutes at this point? And not only have only a couple of people gone down, but you're right, Fire Giant has respawned. That's how all of this started, was Fire Giant being picked up by Alien Nation and stolen away by NC State Red. And Alien Nation, despite the fact that they can't find a decisive victory in any of these engagements, managed to keep NC State Red where they're at. They don't let the lead spiral out of control, don't give up pretty much anything to the Fire Giant that gets stolen away from them. With Gold Fury still on the map, Fire Giant now back up, and a Titan in left lane, things are still tense for another minute or so, but if they can clear out this Titan, if they can make their way to the Fire Giant pit without surrendering control to NC State Red, then, and only then, Frog, can we finally take that deep breath? Because now we are once again at parity and at a neutral map state. NC State Red have prominent positioning around the Fire Giant, and Alien Nation need to get in here, but as long as they don't give it up right now, they're right back to where they started out at.
They've got the secure advantage. It feels like in Alien Nation, they're on the Gold Fury. They've got 3 members over here on the left side of the map, not even pressuring for this Fire Giant. It's only 2 here to defend it if NC State want to stick on top of it. That's the Typhoon. A steel tool now gone for Alien Nation. The ultimates get dropped. Trey finds one, but the steel could come through as they look for it. NC State find the secure and continue on the path forward. They call the bluff. They get the Fire Giant in trade for the Gold Fury. And they even have more to say as they're continuing the funnel down the mid lane. Demise gets jumped on by the enemies, but a double ult, and Trey finds Strength the Dragon, a 2-for-1 across the map as Argus will fall down now. They've got a wave pushing up to them in mid lane. They are going to start the siege.
They're going to hang out here and wait for the wave to come to them. And I see gets a little impatient there, starts tanking the tower down. Markers will do the rest of the work for him. But now it's going to be a 4v5 Frog. 20 seconds left on J-Bugger. Defender of Olympus is up, so once he respawns, should be able to make his way to this fight pretty quickly. But at the same time, Strength of the Dragon should be up by that point, and it should be a 5v5 once again. I just don't know if I'm on board with Alien Nation giving up the FG in exchange for the Gold Fury. They're certainly giving up a lot of towers and a lot of positioning on the map in exchange for it. I don't know if they weren't comfortable making it to the pit. I find it hard to believe that Alien Nation didn't know that NC State was around there. I mean, obviously Strength of Dragon and Mongoose Man walk up and do put them on vision, but up until that point, they were almost playing like they didn't know that that was taking place, like they didn't know NC State Red had 5 people circled around the FG pit. And it is possible, I guess. I mean, you're fighting over Gold Fury for 4 minutes. You might lose the thread a little bit and think that the Gold Fury is the ultimate objective and the thing that you should really be fighting over. It's just a second slip here from Alien Nation. The first one was not being able to meet the damage check on that Fire Giant that they pulled, and now a second critical error around the FG gives another opportunity to NC State Red. And don't forget, part of the reason that NC State didn't manage to get anything off of their previous Fire Giant was they were very behind to start with. I mean, just getting the fight win, getting the Fire Giant, that barely put them at even. But now they're a couple thousand gold ahead. We're talking level 20 for almost everybody on NC State, save for that Athena. Starter items now finished out, builds being rounded out as well. They have the tools necessary to force their lead onto Alien Nation, and we have to see a response from them here.
Last time, it was the steal away for NC State that just put them at parity. This time, they do the taking of the Fire Giant. They find themselves in a comfortable lead, now sieging in a 3-2 split. J-Bugger around the wall. He's looking for the infamous dash taunt to come through, and Fire and Icy hasn't been the hero of game number 1, but certainly has been there to follow up with the damage when the CC does come through. And they've got minutes on this Fire Giant still, Kaizo. At least a minute and a half left before this buff falls off. There it goes, the dash taunt, but great zoning through. It's little bro face and down to like 2 HP, but is able to stay alive somehow. The mid Phoenix is under pressure as well, but Trey makes his way towards the left-hand side. And the zoning from Strength the Dragon. Now the Athena is back on the way towards the left-hand side, but the health bars maybe not healthy enough. Thor ult in, but hits nobody.
It doesn't hit anybody. Demise gets taunted in, though.
Taunted in and looking for the Aegis. His stink meat has to try and survive, and Markers is up a little bit too far. Arrayus, J-Bugger, everybody down low, and Alien Nation there looking for the chase. The blink away, the CC is there, and they're at least able to find the Athena. But this has got to be a counter push. They can chase them all the way down the lane.
They're gonna try for it. Couple of turning around here from Trey and the rest of the boys, maybe thinking about taking the fight. Fire and Icy throws out a couple of shots here, but they have to be careful. Strength the Dragon has the ult back up.
Needs to find the stun and does trap the dash. The beads are not good enough, and Fire and Icy loses his life. Mongoose Man and the rest of the crew pushing down the left-hand side, and Strength the Dragon does not want to wait for the minion wave. The entire team, they've got a runic bomb. That left Phoenix will fall almost instantly, and it's a 2 versus 5 defense here. Low health bars though, and a respawn for Makers. They might have overstayed. The health bars, they're going down fast. Arrayus finds Little Bro Face and finds a double kill, as now it's NC State on the re-engage.
Markers with the ult has the defender of Olympus and lands it this time around. Demise getting chased out too.
On to 2, and J-Bugger finds the double kill. Kaizo, they fight all the way to the left-hand side. Alien Nation push their way back up. They take a bird, and then they lose 4 members.
Hang on, Frog. We might be flipping the script here because Stinkmeat doesn't have the ult for another 20 to 30 seconds. And that's about the respawn timer for 4 members on Alien Nation. They don't have any Phoenixes yet, but the wave is already here. Can 3 members take the Titan in 10 seconds or less?
No Fire and Icy here. He's clearing out waves on the left-hand side. It looks like they will just tame their expectations a little bit. They'll take the mid Phoenix and put focus down towards the left Phoenix, but they gotta be careful they don't overstay. The damage from Stinkmeat is good and forces the members of NC State back away from that left bird. They are able to trade birds, but it's not a 1-for-1 trade. They're offset in lanes, Kaizo.
And this is the stage of the game where my job, Frog, as the analyst in this relationship, is to tell you what just happened and who it was better for. And what just happened was a whole lot of back and forth fighting, and who it's better for is kind of up in the air. I mean, both teams get a Phoenix, and your reflex is always to say the team that gets the dual lane Phoenix is favored because it's harder to defend while you're also positioning around Fire Giant. But the way this game has been going, I don't know that wave management is necessarily on the menu for these teams. They're both ravenous. They both want to get that last killing blow off and manage to take this game away. And I'm not sure that we're going to pause for any minion waves beforehand.
Enhanced Fire Giant picked up for NC State. They've got their eyes on it. Just a bait, though, to start things out. I think everybody wants to make sure they can find a little bit of damage, maybe a pick on the enemy side. At the same time, nobody wants to step up first. Nobody wants to be the one that gets caught out, that leads their team being down lower here. Mongoose Man, though, he gets taunted early and poked down to half HP. You burn the beads off the jungler. You get the jump away as well. This is the perfect re-engage for NC State. Down low is Markers, and they find Little Bro Face onto Mongoose Man is Trey. And in the back line, the Thor trying to survive, but the rest of his team is their fingers glued to the W key. And a 4-man swing for NC State. Markers, he could die, he could survive. It does not matter. NC State will push down the mid lane and take game number 2.
Wow, Frog, is all I have to say at the end of that one, is they take the set 2-0 after, if you looked away at 15 minutes into this game, or at least before that Fire Giant goes down, you're probably thinking that Alien Nation pushes us to a game number 3. They had a fantastic early game. They transitioned it very well into the mid game. And as soon as they took that step, as soon as they attempted to transition a medium-sized lead into a bigger lead by doing that Fire Giant, that was the one mistake that NC State Red needed. They get there right on time. The hero ultimate comes in from Markers, and the rest of the crew follows up to make sure not only do they take away the Fire Giant, but manage to strip a couple of lives as well and really break that game open. I mean, Alien Nation did a phenomenal job of defending around the Gold Fury pit, not giving anything up while they were down on the Fire Giant power play. But even still, I mean, NC State Red kept up the pressure every single opportunity they got. They fell early, didn't stumble, got back up, fought their way back into it, and capitalized perfectly on the only two mistakes that Alien Nation made basically in that entire game. That's how razor thin the margins were here in game number 2, Frog. Incredible stuff.
What a fantastic match. That one has NC State Red going on to face the number 1 seed in the Sharixx division in the semifinals. Congratulations to them getting their way through the quarterfinals. Of course, some things definitely to take away from that game if you're Alien Nation, if if they intend to stick together, been around for a while in the league. So I think you're still taking a lot away from that game in terms of things you did right, things you did wrong. But I mean, you really put a bow on it. It's the small mistakes, and it's not even a lot of them. It's just
Nope.
it's just a
Two.
couple of them that they end up losing out on some critical moments in that game. I gotta ask you guys, do you have an MVP from NC State Red for this set?
It's so tough because your reflex, right, is to say Fire and Icy with the game that he had in game number 1. But okay, this is gonna sound so biased, Frog. I honestly think that it's gotta be J-Bugger because the way he played game number 1, playing an initiator role that I've never seen a Geb do before, baiting out all of the cooldowns in the world, getting giant cataclysms, incredible knockups, and then game number 2, completely controlling the pace of that fire giant fight on the right hand side to end the game, starting off each of these engagements by forcing a pair of beads or getting an incredible 2-3-man taunt off for the follow-up damage from Fire and Icy. It's so hard to look like an MVP player on support, and I think J-Bugger, for my money, absolutely met that mark today.
I got to give it to you. I mean, J-Bugger definitely played really well. I got to give it to Markers for me because he hits top damage in both game 1 and game 2. This game, I think he hits it by a mere like 40, less than 40 damage. He's above Fire and Icy. But I mean, game number 1, he feels unkillable on the Hercules, just making infinite space. And then game number 2, some stumbles for sure on that Thor, I think, early on, but in the constant ults. Think about how they punish those mistakes. You don't get those punishes off if you don't have the Thor ult to close the gap in some of those spots. So, I mean, I think Markers plays really well. The entirety of NC State Red comes together, plays fantastic, takes a 2-0 set, pushes them to the semifinals. That's all we got, though. It's been Frog, it's been Kaizo, from everybody here behind the scenes as well from the Albion Giants League. Thank you so much for coming out and watching some action. Make sure you take a look at our tournaments this weekend. You've got the Class Act Duel, the Draft Conquest this weekend, and almost every weekend. There's tournaments. Did you know that, Kaizo? They actually have tournaments every weekend. You can play.
That's insane, Frog. That makes me, as a player, want to get involved in those tournaments.
Dude, that's exactly what I was going to say. And you don't even have to have friends. Like you, for example, you can play in the Class Act Duel tournament.
It's don't perfect even need for people like you, Frog.
You don't even need to have a team going into it. Come out, have some fun. Albion Giants Smite League, that is going to be your home for that action, as well as some great competitive action. So from me, from Kaizo, from everybody here behind the scenes of production, thank you so much for coming out and watching. Have a great night.